So let's officially bring in Governor of New Jersey, Governor Christie. Governor, welcome back.
Morning. Happy to be here.
Well, first off, I have to say, I see that Jack Welch tweeted out something that Rupert Murdoch tweeted out right away. Said that I know you're very tight with Governor Romney and his campaign, that it's time to change some things, essentially, within the campaign. Do you think Governor Romney should visit where he is at in these 2 days he has off?
No, I really don't. I mean, I think if you look at where this race is right now, you saw some recent polls come out just this morning showing that in the battleground states, Governor Romney has a pretty sizable lead over President Obama, and the race is a margin of error race. If I had told you back in February when Governor Romney was getting beaten up all over the Republican primary that we'd be sitting here on 4th of July and he'd be in a dead heat with the president, you would have signed up for that. The fact of the matter is I think Governor Romney's running a good campaign. He's focused. He's confident. And I don't think there's, any time to change right now. I think we've got a good campaign team, and they're moving the campaign forward.
You weren't concerned at all that one of his main spokespeople yesterday agreed with President Obama and said that Governor Romney agrees that the Supreme Court ruling that the health care is a tax is not a tax, it's a penalty. Listen,
I get less concerned about what spokespeople say and more concerned about what the person who's going to be president of the United States says. And I think sometimes we get obsessed over, what different spokespeople will say. You know why they're spokespeople and not candidates? You just saw that reason, So, Governor Romney knows what he feels about these issues, and he feels strongly about it.
So it was a mistake?
Oh, well, listen, I'm not even going to evaluate whether it was a mistake or not. It doesn't matter to me. I mean, listen, we have a 24-hour news cycle, okay? And you all have to put content on 24 hours, and the campaign feels it necessary to push people out there to do that. That's fine, but I think what really matters, what the American people are going to really focus on, is what do they hear from Mitt Romney directly? And what they're hearing from him is a plan to put Americans back to work, and that's what they really care about.
So where does he go from here? What's the next step? Do you stay on Obamacare? Do you stay on whether or not Obamacare is a tax? Do you hit those points? Or do you turn it back to the job situation that he loves to play in?
Listen, I think the thing that the American people care about the most are jobs and getting people back to work, getting themselves, their neighbors, their friends back to work. And I think Governor Romney, when he talks about that, that's when he's his most self-confident best because he knows how to do that. He knows how to create jobs. And I think that's what you'll see him go back to. But, of course, this week, given the Supreme Court ruling, you're going to hear a lot of conversation about Obamacare. But I think you're going to hear more about jobs in the economy, at least from Governor Romney.
I think that jobs remain the number one thing. But a lot of people felt like Romney could really gain some steam from this health care ruling because he could argue that the only way you're going to get rid of Obamacare if you don't like it is to elect me.
Well,
so I think that's what some people thought yesterday. That was really damaging because it sort of took away the glory run of that argument.
Well, geez, I don't think that took away the glory run, Gretchen. I mean, Governor Romney himself has been out there saying, now there's one alternative left. I heard him say it the other day. You have to elect me if you want to get rid of Obamacare. He gets it, and you'll hear him saying that. That's why I'm saying to you, I think it's very important for us to distinguish between what a spokesperson might say on TV and what the candidate himself is going to say. I listen to Mitt Romney, and when Mitt Romney speaks, I see a candidate that's now more self-confident, more self-assured, more on message than at any time during the campaign. And I think that's what's causing the president so many problems.
So let's talk about you. Governor of New Jersey will now have this Obamacare come to your theater. And your theater says set up exchanges. You got until 2014 to do it. And number two, expand Medicaid. Are you going to join Governor Scott, Governor Perry, Governor Walker in not expanding Medicaid and not setting up exchanges?
Listen, as we've talked about before, Medicaid is pretty well expanded in our state already because of the legacy of previous Democratic governors. And so I don't think there's a lot more for us to do in New Jersey in that regard. Secondly, on exchanges, remember, you have two options under the law. You can set up a state exchange or you can let the federal government set up your exchange. And so, we're going to consider both of those options and what's the most cost-effective for the citizens of New Jersey. I don't want to spend any money that I don't have to spend from state taxpayer dollars. And so the fact of the matter is, if it's more cost-effective to let the federal government set this up, we may consider going that route on the health exchanges because you do have the two options.
If 10 years down the line, the federal government starts weaning off of that and puts it more to the states, you might not be in office then.
Well, it's absolutely true, Brian, but the cost factor is much more on Medicaid than it is on the exchanges.
Governor, are you surprised at the poll we showed this morning that 41% of the people when polled didn't know that the health care ruling even came down?
No, it's July. Real Americans are on vacation. They're relaxing with their families and tuned into it. But that never surprises me.
It
concerns me because I'm someone who's very plugged into this, as you are, and I care about it deeply. But you need to understand, you've got the American people out there who are struggling to pay their mortgages, who are struggling to pay their kids' tuition that's going to come up this summer for sending them to college, who would love to just have a few dollars to put together to take their kids to the Jersey Shore, which is what they really should do. Take them to the Jersey Shore this summer.
Yeah, forget the Hamptons.
I mean, seriously, well, please, why would you go to the Hamptons?
Absolutely.
Really? Right? So, they're concerned about real-life kitchen table issues. And while Obamacare does matter, I think the fact that the Supreme Court put down a ruling, while I'm disheartened that 41% of the people didn't know it, I'm not shocked.
I'm not shocked either, but in a more cynical way, because half of the American public cannot name who the vice president is, and half the American public doesn't go to vote.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Is that a fair assessment, too, that we can look at this cynically and say that people just aren't plugged in general?
Well, some percentage of those people certainly, are. The people who don't take time to go and vote, you wouldn't be surprised to learn that they didn't know that the United States Supreme Court came down with a ruling on Obamacare. But I do also think there's an element of it, Gretchen, of people, once you get into the summer, where people say, listen, I got plenty of time to listen to these arguments come Labor Day. Give me my summer. Let me vacation with my family. Let me keep looking for a job. I'm not going to focus on those other things. We have to understand there are real problems out there among the American people. They've been suffering for a number of years, and they're plugged more into that than they are into some of the stuff that's happened in Washington.
And, Governor, one of the big things, you're concerned about jobs, but you had to come in and you had to lean out government. And for the third straight year, you've balanced the budget. How have you struck that balance?
Well, listen, because you have to make tough choices, and we did it again this year. Our budget this year is smaller than the Corzine budget was 5 years ago.
How do you explain that?
Because you made hard choices. You go in there and you cut spending in places that are unnecessary. You invest in the things that make sense, like K-12 education for our kids. We were just talking about how great the school system is in Linden. You got to invest in those school systems to make sure that we keep our kids educated. But, you do things like, for the third year in a row now, I vetoed a Democratic income tax increase. $800 million income tax increase they wanted to put on the people of New Jersey in this economy. At the same time, I called a special session yesterday to say, cut taxes. Give a 10% tax cut to people. They got up and they walked out of the chamber without voting.
The Democrats.
Yes.
The Democratic legislature.
What is this walking out thing?
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, the bill was there. They could have just voted on it. They listened to my speech, and then they left without voting. While the people in New Jersey are suffering under the highest tax burden of anybody in America, and as I'm trying to cut their taxes after reining in spending and doing it responsibly, they say, let's wait till December or January to cut taxes. Well, that doesn't help the family this summer who's looking for some certainty for tax relief.
Before we go, Governor, is Obamacare a tax?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, listen, I thought all along that it was a tax. And I don't think it's exclusively a tax or a penalty. It's both. There's no question in my mind about that. It's both. They're meaning to penalize people, and they argued at the Supreme Court it was a tax. Now, of course, he argued in the campaign and forward that it wasn't, but he's now in a bind. He's in a bind as to what this is all about. But I think there's no question that it's both. It's meant to penalize people, and it is a tax. There's no doubt, because it's meant to pay for a government program.
Many people believe this election in November will be the most important of our lifetime. Do you agree with that?
Well, sure. Listen, I think every presidential election has its own measure of importance, but I think this one, where you have two such radically different visions of America's future, one that's government-centric by the president, and one that is empowering the American people to use their entrepreneurial spirit to help grow the private economy, and Governor Romney, those are such different visions of America that you're going to get a very different America depending on these results in November. So, yeah, I think it's extraordinarily important, not to mention how we're going to deal with some of the problems we have overseas.
Right, and Governor, a lot of people are saying, look, we're going to find out within the next 3 months probably who the running mate would be. What's more attractive, let's say theoretically, about the number 2 spot as opposed to the number 1 spot? Talk to your family over the weekend, it's not going to work. Now you think to yourself, 4 months, it'll be a sprint, not a marathon like it originally was going to be. Is that more attractive?
Listen, you know what's attractive to me being governor of New Jersey? And there's this selection of a vice presidential candidate is an election with one voter. It's Mitt Romney. And Governor Romney's going to decide who he thinks is the best person to be his partner. As I've said before, I love being governor of New Jersey. I have every intention of staying as governor. If Governor Romney calls, I'll certainly listen because he's the nominee of my party. And I've been working for him. I was the first governor to come out for him last October.
Right.
But If given my preference, I'd like to be the governor.
Are they doing a background check on you right now?
Listen, let the Romney campaign talk about that stuff. That's up to them to talk about, not me. Any conversations I have with Governor Romney are between me and Governor Romney.
Do you want to have a one-on-one in the Nets' old stadium? Because they're out of there now, right?
Well, yeah, listen, the Prudential Center does host the Stanley Cup finalists, the New Jersey Devils, so maybe I'll skate a little bit for you.
That'll be good.
My governor. Chris Christie.
Thanks for being here.
All right, Governor, see you in the Hamptons.
Oh, no, Brian, that where you go, elitists like you,
Oh my
go to the
God.
Hamptons, come on.
Don't make me storm off again.
Jersey Shore, let's go.
All right,
I think he can take you, Brian,
I think he
okay?
can, too.
Coming up on Fox